I have a degree in philosophy, and I'd read a lot of complicated books in college, and I'd always loved philosophy and the philosophy of religion. And I was reading a book on contemplative thought called The Cloud of Unknown. Anybody that's ever tried that, very, very difficult book. And if you haven't had certain experiences, there's absolutely no way to know what the guy's talking about. And and we're having lunch, and I'm telling him about this book I'm reading, and he said he'd asked me about my 11th step, and he said, "Are you following the directions in the book for the 11th step?" And I remember looking at him and kind of thinking, "Oh, Mickey, poor Mickey. It's always the book with this guy." But what I answered the truth. And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm not doing that." He goes, "Why don't you do that? Would you please do that? Would you think about doing that? Add on anything you want, but would you do that too?" And I said, "Sure, I would." And about 20 years later, I did. So it took me a while. I typed up the questions for the nightly review. I typed up the prayers so that I could have them right next to, and I wouldn't have to look for them. I wouldn't have to thumb through pages in my big book. And they sat there for years and years and years and years. And eventually, maybe about the time we started working the steps every year, I know what it was. I went down to Santa Fe with Heidi, and Tom had invited us down as part of that group, and we went through the steps with a group of people down there. And at the end of that deal, Tom gave us each a book that had all the questions from the nightly review. And I took that. I was offended by that too. But I took that book home with me, and I began to use it. And I've gotten very, very consistent about answering those questions. Since then, I've had plenty of those books printed out. Guys that I sponsor get one of those books. If you want to use this, it made it easier for me. Maybe it'll make it easier for you. Why on earth am I talking about all this in terms of emotional sobriety? So what I've learned through those years of following that practice of doing the nightly review is that something magical has happened and something has switched. And I've begun to understand, here's the fascinating thing to me about that paper. I believe Bill Wilson was a seeker. He continued to seek till the very end of his life. I heard a thing on YouTube, a guy named Lincoln Norton taught Bill to meditate in 1971, just like a year before he died. And so here was a guy that continually was seeking, and 14 years after the big book comes out, or 19 years after the big book's published, this letter comes out in the grapevine, Emotional Sobriety. And Bill amplifies this idea about being tied into these dependencies. And they are dependencies for the demand for absolute satisfaction of what turns out to be what we now call the survival instincts. They are column 3 of our resentment inventory. I'm threatened at the level of self-esteem, security, ambition, personal and sex relations. He also does this in the 12 and 12. He does it in step 4. He does it in step 10. And he goes into a little discussion in step 7 also about being keyed into these instinctual desires and demanding that they be satisfied, and the demand then turns into a resentment incubator because nobody can ever fully meet our demands. And all this stuff, the fascinating part for me is that as it took Bill time to pull all this together, it took me time to pull all this together. And so the 11th step, that nightly review, in the 11th step, were we selfish? Were we dishonest? Were we resentful? Have we kept something to ourselves? Were we dishonest, afraid? Do we owe an apology? this circles back to this whole idea of self-examination and investigating. Are we threatened at the level of self-esteem? These instincts for for survival. Self-esteem, security, ambitions, personal and sex relations. And it's my belief now that the way that, if you're writing 4-column inventory, you've got the third column is those instincts for survival. Were we hurt or threatened? Self-esteem, security, ambitions, personal and sex relations. That once I'm activated there, see, the other thing Mickey told me, oh man, the one year he told me you got to come back every year. The next year he told me, I've only told 2 people this, but I think you need therapy. And I had a real problem with anger, and I really wanted it gone. And I really worked hard, and I did the steps, and I set my intention to allow God to change me. And man, it wasn't changing. And I'd really been looking into ideas about what's working in other people's lives. And he made that suggestion, and I said yes. And I got some therapy with a deal called DBT, and it was all about becoming aware of your emotions, your feelings, and your thoughts without over-identifying with them. And I thought, wow, that sounds very similar to meditation. But it was a practical set of exercises that allowed me to do that. And then I started investigating because I got so excited about that. My sponsor recommended it, and timing was perfect. I was 30-some years sober at the time. Then I tried a technique called EMDR, which is about removing trauma, and things changed. And all this stuff also began to click into place, man. The puzzle was just falling into place. That once I'm activated at that level of survival threat, especially bad for me, well, for anybody who's experienced trauma in their childhood, that stuff gets locked in. That's the theory. And so it was devastating. Why do I overreact? Why do I treat my wife like this? Why do I treat the contractors working for me? I feel threatened. And once I feel threatened, once I'm activated in column 3 of that resentment inventory, I am hardwired to try to save me, try to save my life. I feel I'm threatened. It's a survival instinct. I'm threatened at my life. And so I react, hardwired to react, selfish, dishonest, resentful, and afraid. All that stuff in the 4th column. And the genius of Bill putting this thing out like this and understanding this, of course, Bill was in touch with some of the finest minds that were, both in psychology and in religion. And he was a seeker, so he was always looking for more and new, and how can we make this thing better? And this stuff began to make sense. And then a couple of other things that happened in Bill's writings were, a couple of years ago, as this stuff was kind of falling into place, and I got really excited about doing the nightly review, and it ceased to be kick your own butt exercise. That when I would write down selfish, dishonest, were you resentful? Yeah, I'm resentful at M for missing our meeting. This is just last night. I'm resentful at M for missing our meeting and not letting anyone know what's up. This affects my self-esteem, my security, my ambitions, my personal and sex relations. Because I get thrown off. I think it's got something to do with me. I'm thrown off balance. Now I can only react as selfish. I selfishly rely on me to get my own needs met for self-esteem, security, ambitions. And it's possible, because a miracle's taken place, that I can also step back and see the reaction. I'm starting to pay as much attention to my reaction as I am to the event. And I can step back and I can say, take a deep breath. David, I will trust and rely on infinite God to give me everything I need in this moment. And a shift can occur. And so as I wrote that nightly review on a regular basis, I'm still working the steps with Mickey. I finish up this therapy stuff. And I'm just starting to feel a new enthusiasm for how incredible this awakening can be. And I'm beginning to get this sense that this business of emotional sobriety is tied in with the whole idea of an awakening, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. And it clicked for me that there's a promise inherent there. And the promise is, David, if you work these steps, you'll have an awakening. And I found nothing in the book that said it's a one and done. And I began to see the brilliance of Mickey saying, let's meet every year. And you'll go through these every year. Why not an awakening every time I'm willing to work the 12 steps? And then one day I get an email. And this email, I don't even remember who sent it, but on the bottom of it, there's a quote from Bill Wilson, page 8, as Bill sees it. So I'm starting to believe and starting to tell other people, I think we can have more than one awakening. And and so people are coming to me that have worked the steps and they're saying, let's go through them again. And so this email comes in. I'm thinking about, can't be one and done. There must be a possibility to continue to grow. I'm beginning to believe that this thing's an evolution, that as we reach a new level of consciousness and our problems are removed, which by the way is a promise in the big book, the problem will be removed, promise of the 10th step. I begin to wonder, why do problems keep coming up? And it all of a sudden makes sense. I'm evolving. I have new tools and new equipment for the problems. Those have been removed. But now I got a whole set of new ones. There will never be a place when I'm done. There is always room to grow. There is always room to have to trust and rely on infinite God. And I am always ripe for a new awakening. And so I get this email. And here's what this email says. Bill Wilson, as Bill sees it, page 8. Is sobriety all that we are to expect of a spiritual awakening? He's apparently asked. No. Sobriety is only a bare beginning. It is the first gift of the first awakening. If more gifts are to be received, our awakening has to go on. Whoa. And then a couple of years ago, I'm sitting in a meeting, a guy that I don't particularly like or trust reads something out of the 12 and 12. It's from page 98. And it blew my mind. And I knew I was in the right place. And I knew I never had to go anywhere to get the gifts that so many of us have received. But I don't have to look any further. I have a perfect action plan. I have the promises and the results and the benefits of working these steps and what that'll look like. I can continually evolve. I can, or I can choose not to, continually awake. On page 98, Bill talks about the connection between continuing to do self-examination, 4th step, 10th step, nightly review, the connection between continuing to do self-examination and prayer and meditation. So we continue to examine ourselves in the 10th step, in the nightly review, my case once a year, and anytime I go through a big book workshop, I write a little inventory, self-examination, and we continue this practice of nightly review, which I consider to be part of prayer and meditation. Interesting that the very first thing the 11th step says about prayer and meditation is constructively review your day, as if, and that clicked all of a sudden. Oh my gosh, I get it. It's an inventory in a way, but it's also part of prayer and meditation to do this nightly review. All right, so anyway, page 98, 12 and 12. It's under the section on step 11. There is a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit. But when they are logically related and interwoven, the result is an unshakable foundation for life. Now and then we may be granted a glimpse of the ultimate reality, which is God's kingdom. And we will be comforted and assured that our own destiny in that realm will be secure for so long as we try, however falteringly, to find and do the will of our Creator. And we have seen self-searching is the means by which, self-searching of me and self-searching for the great reality deep down within. In the last analysis, it's only there that he will be found, or at least Bill thought. Self-searching is a means by which we bring new vision, action, grace to bear upon the dark and negative side of our natures. And so the inventory process really ends up being what he told us in the big book in step 4. We had to get down to causes and conditions. We had to find the things which had been blocking us. And that's what it's about. It's not about you're a rotten SOB, you're insane, you're treating people horribly. All that's true, but it's not about that. It's about seeing what separates me from God. If the great reality is deep down within, how are my thoughts, actions, feelings, and emotions blocking me off from that great reality? And through this self-searching, both in self-examination and for God, looking for God, it is a step in the development of the kind of humility that makes it possible to receive God's help. Yet it is only a step. We will want to go further. And so the brilliance, I believe, of Bill's paper, Emotional Sobriety, this added information, this idea that sobriety's just the first gift of the first awakening. There are many awakenings to come. Explain that I have a program here that's good for the rest of my life, and that I can have as much of this as I want, as much of God's grace, as much of that communion, and that the only thing that will stop that will short that circuit that's been established, is my unwillingness to continue along this path. And then a final thought, and this is something that's become apparent to me. I've been a long time daily meditator. I was trained, a guy I went to work for said, if you stay here 1 year, I'll get you trained. And the first form of meditation I learned was transcendental meditation. That was over 32 years ago. And I took to it. I was already a couple of years sober. And I took to it. And so I established this practice. And I've been doing it. I've tried a lot of different things, but I've been doing it consistently to the best of my knowledge. I've never missed a day in 32 years. But here's the point of that I believe this inner connectedness, this interrelatedness of self-examination and prayer and meditation begins to manifest as we do it on a regular basis, that the self-examination informs my meditation. I take what I've reviewed into my meditation. And a lot of times I write that stuff at night, and I believe it goes into our sleep life and our dreams and the thought life that takes place when we're dreaming and in deep sleep. Somebody told me that makes sense, and then it makes sense to me because oftentimes I wake up with different ideas than I went to bed with. But the examination informs prayer and meditation, And then as I sit with some of that stuff in prayer and meditation, where I remember no thought is worth thinking about and return ever so gently to my center, my stillness within, then the meditation begins to inform the self-examination. And I'm no longer the bad guy. I no longer need to kick my own ass. I can offer forgiveness, compassion to me and to other people. And say, as my wife says to me, she has a great phrase, which is, he would do better if he could do better. And I used to love that. And I loved it even more when we went to bed one night and I was angry and I was being mean to her because she had done something I didn't like. And I went to bed and I didn't sleep very well that night. And when I woke up the next morning, the first thing I did was meditate. And when I came out of that meditation, I said, I have to say something to Heidi. And I was afraid to say something to Heidi. It's just more of David, David, David. This was just within the last year, you know. And when she came up, I said, Heidi, I am so sorry for the way I treated you. And she said, you mean being mean to me? And I said, yeah, I mean being mean to you. And she said, oh, David, you would do better if you could do better. And I just wanted to weep, you know, that she extended that to me too. And I understand that that's everyone's plight. We would do better if we could do better. No one wakes up saying, I'm going to try to ruin David Huff's life today. And so if we keep working these steps, guess what? We're going to show up and we're going to do better next time. We stay in this process, especially the interrelatedness of this self-examination and prayer and meditation. And you know what? We begin to do better. We set the intention and then the action shows up. So anyway, I just love this and I'm just so excited to be able to talk about it and share some of my experience around this emotional sobriety and thoughts about awakening and prayer and meditation and survival instincts and how they hardwire us into selfish, dishonest, resentful, and fearful actions, and how there is a way out. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and join in brotherly and harmonious action. And that's as exciting to me today as it was the day I walked into AA. So thank you, Chris, and thank you.
Thank you, David. That was incredible. You know, I think when you were sharing the line from our book that just kept coming up for me was on page 57, where it says, what is this but a miracle of healing? And I think that's just, that's what this is. And I think that's what you spoke about. And we are going to open it up now for shares. I think that Tom is on here. I know he was going to introduce you, so I don't know if he wants to jump in and say something, and then if he'd like to take over moderating from there. Thanks again, David. Oh, did Tom kick himself back off? Well.
Okay, I'm here.
Oh, he's here. Okay.
I'm alcoholic. I said, what I want to do is make amends for screwing this thing up. I told Sam that I would read the letter and introduce David. And David, that was fantastic. I caught most of it. And you are one of my dear, dear friends, and I just love you deeply. And, you know, a lot of people don't know this, but back when I was 9 years sober and I hit a really, really bad snag, David Huff saved my life, and nothing short. And Juanita will tell you that. So I owe him a great debt of gratitude, and I love him very much. And I think this is one of the best ones we've had. I think he hit all the bases, and I'm going to stay doing it, and I'm going to stay with you. So God bless us all. Thanks. And forgive me, everyone. If I could have done better, I would have done better. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. All right, David, if you see people on the screen there that you'd like to hear from, feel free to call on people. We also have the raise hand feature. So if folks want to do that, or if people want to just jump in, it's really just whatever people feel like doing. Okay, I see a raised hand. We've got Kat V and Philly. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm Kat. I'm a real alcoholic. David, thank you so much. It's so wild that you spoke specifically about 11 and touched a little bit on 10 and tied it into this emotional sobriety tonight. I've been ranting and raving to people recently because it only took me close to 3 years to start practicing 10 as it's outlined in the book and 11 as it's outlined in the book properly. I think that when my sponsor took me through 10 and 11, she told me I could do like this 10-step nightly review. And it wasn't until I got my first sponsee that I was confused, right? So I thought I was doing the 10th step by just answering all these questions solo on my own each night and maybe texting them to my sober sisters in AA or someone else in AA. And I thought 11 was just prayer and meditation. So I was doing 10 as I thought I understood it. I was doing 11 as I thought I understood it. But when I started to take other women through the book, I was confused and I was like, well, that's not what the book says. I'm not doing it right. And I think I asked for clarification and just didn't get it still. And then more recently, hearing other people talk about how they did it, and then other women that I don't even know that I've just met on Zoom reaching out to have me listen to 10-step calls of theirs. I was like, why am I not doing this in my day? And then finally, going back and rereading the simple directions that are laid out, and my life has, my entire, my sobriety, my relationship with God, so much has transformed from attending this emotional sobriety workshop and in combination with practicing step 11, and doing, incorporating those questions into my prayer and meditation before I go to bed at night, and then waking up. And I usually listen to Juanita's morning meditation, which just encapsulates Upon Awakening so perfectly. It's just like this brand new spiritual awakening that just keeps swelling and growing and getting bigger and more beautiful. And I had no idea that this is what sobriety also entailed. I literally thought I was going to show up here and you guys were going to teach me how to not drink. I didn't know the mental obsession would go away. I had no idea that I would ever regain any semblance of emotional sobriety. I thought I would still be a sick, depressed, anxiety-ridden person who just didn't drink. And thank you so much for speaking tonight, ma'am.
Thanks, Kat. Okay, we got some more hands coming up. Let's see. We got Sarah H. in Brooks, Iowa.
Actually, Chris, Liz Higgins was on there first.
Oh, okay. Okay. Wow. Very, very polite. Okay, Liz, go ahead.
It's okay. I'm Liz. I'm an alcoholic. I'm so happy right now just hearing everything that you said. And also, just like what Kat said too, realizing how much I need to and really want to do this consistently because, when I first did the steps and I experienced like the freedom and the reality and the truth that, I get to be a human being with a consciousness that's separate from this leech of self that's telling me, all of this stuff that's absolutely not true. Like I get to wake up every morning and be a living, breathing human being with the powers that God gave me and do that. I get to now choose how I want to be in the world, and if I don't do this, exactly what you said every day, I'm letting myself be weighed down. And I love what you said about evolution. Like we're the spearhead of an ever advancing creation. So, I want to stay ahead of myself on this, because it's like the greatest feeling in the world is just the truth, that my consciousness and my God-given life has absolutely nothing to do with the BS that, that myself tells me. I think there's a really simple prayer I heard recently: God, help me to not suffer from what isn't happening today. And like, that's really what I end up writing down when I, when I do this. And it's, every other day, because I'm still learning that I want to do better. But this is really like, I have that book, The Cloud of Unknowing, and it's funny. It is really funny. I was just telling Kat, because when I got sober, I had a spiritual awakening that scared the shit out of me. And I've been trying to figure out what the hell happened for 3 years, But it's really like, it's incredible. This is my favorite meeting. I call this Holy Thursdays because this is really just the best. And so thank you so much, David. Be curious to pick your brain about Teilhard de Chardin, what you thought about that guy. Also, I eat books in my, alcoholic endeavor to try and figure out what the heck happened to me when I got sober. But I love this, and thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Liz. All right, now we have Sarah, who's been patiently waiting.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah, and I'm an alcoholic. And what a great meeting, Dave. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for chairing and stuff. The take that you had on some of these things, it's like I know that I have at least one sponsee who just went aha. She just texted me with an aha. And so I'm really grateful the way that you put this. Personally, like I not only answer these questions, but I write them in a letter to God every night. And it started one time. I had always found journaling very cathartic and very helpful to me. And then I heard somebody talk about writing a letter to God. One of the things for me with journaling was that I never could keep up with it. I always walked away from it. And, I'd be pretty good at it, and consistent for, maybe a week or so. And then I'd end up, just kind of going about my day and going about at night. And this is when I write the letter to God, is at night. And then I heard this person say about writing a letter to God. And I thought, well, that'd be pretty cool. I think that's a pretty cool idea. And it would at least give me more of a commitment for some reason. And so I started doing that. I started writing a letter to God. And I'll have you know that now for probably about 22, 23 years, most of my sobriety, I have been writing that letter. Every night I write a letter to God. And I go through those questions. I don't necessarily do them specifically, but I review my day. And I do have that book that you're talking about, that with every page has the questions on it. I do have that one. I think that's a great book. But I go through that and I look at this page and I go through it. And here's where when the meditation comes in, I think about what I'm writing to God and reviewing my day and where could I have done better, and if I could have done better, I would have done better. I love that. And so, I usually try to point that out to myself and to God, and, and then I don't necessarily call somebody that at night and review it with them. But if there's something that needs to be said, I'm calling somebody first thing in the morning, or at least at some time during the next day, as quickly as possible, as soon as possible. But this thing that happened with this is it kind of morphed into a thing where I believe, and that spiritual awakening that is happening because of that, I truly believe that God has spoken to me through those things. Because when I write to God, I usually read a nighttime reflection or something. I read something afterwards. It doesn't, some conference approved, some not, but I read something, and invariably whatever I have been discussing with God is answered in that reading, invariably. And one night I was really angry with God and telling him that he needed to tell me what it was I was supposed to be learning about something, and why am I fighting this battle? We'd had a big battle with somebody at work, and I, it had been going on for a long time. And I went to my reading afterwards. At the end of the letter, I said, whatever your will is for me, please let me know what it is, and so we can hurry up and be done with this crap. I'm done with it. I'm yelling at God about this. you know, so I know I've gone too far now when I'm yelling at God. And so I had this reading, and it said to me, it said, the battle is not ours, it's God's. Stand firm and you will have victory. And that complete thing was lifted from me. And the next day I went to work, instead of walking on eggshells, I walked past the lady's desk, and I was free of that. And 2 months later, she quit. You know, I mean, that's the way these things happen, and that emotional sobriety and that connection with God. Another story, and I'll end there, was one night I was getting ready. I used to have my journal on the coffee table, and I'd get up and I'd write before I went to bed. And as I was walking, I walked around the coffee table, and I was walking around. I hadn't written to God that night, and something pulled me over my right shoulder. It was like something literally, physically pulled me. And as I turned, I looked down at the coffee table, and I'm past it already. And I looked down at the coffee table, and there's my journal sitting there. And I could almost hear, you know, I'm not going to say I did, but almost hear God saying to me, what about me? You haven't written to me yet. And I have not missed since then. That scared me a little bit, so I haven't missed. But thank you so much, Dave, for your interpretation of this, and for your wisdom and sharing your experience, strength, and hope with us, that, you know, for that emotional sobriety. This was really good for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, we don't have any raised hands. So, oh, there we go. We got iPhone. iPhone would like to share. Go ahead, iPhone.
Okay, here we go. All right, thanks, guys. My name is Rob. I'm alcoholic here in Denver. David, I just wanted to say thank you. You shared early on in your share about trauma, you know, and that was something that was interfering with your, I'm reading it, it was interfering with your relationship with your creator. I've been going through the similar path, and looking at trauma and grief, and discovering all new things about me, and the challenges that it's presented in my connection with my creator, you know, and in this spiritual walk. And I think it takes a lot of courage in a huge setting like this, a natural setting, to just be that transparent and that open with us and that vulnerable to us. You know, and I think that, you know, I appreciate elders like yourself and some of the other folks on this call sharing that, because, you know, for me, the 10 years I've been around this program, you know, it's taken this long for me to be able to see those things and to know that there's so much more out there, and there's so much more to learn, not just for selfishly learn, but so I can be more effective, you know, because, you know, in a similar vein, you know, I've learned some more about the trauma that I've been through, how I process it, how it's been held in my body, how it shows up in my relationships, in my work relationships, in my marriage relationship, in my friendships, has allowed me to have more compassion and to love more deeply, to care more deeply, and to be more open to the things that my creator asked me to do. So appreciate you sharing that. Thanks, David.
Thank you. Let's see if we don't see any more raised hands, so probably means we're gonna have to start calling on people. Well, maybe David, maybe you have someone you'd like to hear from.
There are so many people here I'd like to hear from, and I would definitely like to hear from Mary Thayer.
Thank you, David. I love you.
I love you.
Yeah, just so great. David and I met at my first Vox. You were in, I think you were chair, weren't you, of that? And your sponsor asked me to speak at it in 1994. God, we go back a ways, don't we? I just so appreciated how you articulated this emotional sobriety and how the book has become more and more authentic, if you will, for where I am today in recovery, probably more so than the way I was reading it and doing it 30 years ago or more. But it's so simple. It's like what it says, simple ideas are the ideas in which we pass through the gateway to freedom. And yet I was complicating it, and I didn't understand. I guess as my soul evolved, I started to see how one step just built onto another. And it wasn't until I got to the point where I looked at this, and only by grace that I've been asked to do these 12-step retreats, you know, for the last 25 years. And because of doing that, I so identify with what you said and what Mickey and you are doing, is that once a year you go through the steps. And I do that. I you know, when the pandemic started, I said, I've never gone through this ever before in sobriety. I better find out, have a little awakening about myself because of the survival, which you were talking about. I knew that this was going to affect every area of my life, and it did. And it still does. Every day I wake up and it's a new deal going on. I don't look at the steps as weapons. I really, really understood finally that they were a kit of spiritual tools. I got to the point with this pandemic, which I've said over and over again, where we got to sharpen our tools here this time. I mean, this is a new deal. This isn't where we're going to bed like we used to go to bed, and you know, and everything was just fine. There's this real awareness of my life's unmanageable. I have no power and control, and every time, as you astutely put, every time you picked up the kit of spiritual tools and tried them one more time, you found another awakening. And for myself, I identify totally with you. There isn't anything that I don't identify with what you're saying. I too have gotten to the point where I've realized that I can't be mean and live inside my bodysuit anymore. It's like, I hated when my sponsor said to me, you know, honey, the road gets narrower and the horizon gets broader. I didn't even know what she was talking about. I couldn't comprehend it. But I love how you said that you and Heidi had this little thing. It took you one day. I mean, think about it 30 years ago. It'd have been a month before you admitted you might have made a little mistake here or there. And that's the way I was. And today, it's so interesting. It's like we actually answer to this higher thing. We actually get into some form of living, you know, in the world of the spirit. And I was thinking as you were talking, and one of the ladies described about developing or improving on the conscious contact of, you know, this power, this thing that's deep down inside. It's like I'm not living alone in my body, in my head. I'm in my bodysuit, and there's a presence that's present. And I didn't know that for years. So everything scared me. I had to be survivalist because I didn't realize it was a power that within that I could tap on. And as Jay recently spoke and said, you know, I love you, I love you, I love you. Nobody taught me how to love you. But I'm here now, and I love you, I love you, I love you. And that isn't about my inner child. That's about the soul. That's about the connection that was deep down inside for me. That's how I look at it, you know. And I realized that nobody had told me that there was another presence, that I wasn't going to be alone. Now I could be alone, but I'm not lonely. There's something going on. And then I saw a line that's jumped out over the last 3 or 4 years, and I use it a lot in my workshops. And it's the last line into the agnostics, where it says, as I grow closer to this presence, by doing the meditation, by doing the journaling, by, you know, doing my reviews, by going from step 1 to 12 once a year, you know, as I grow closer to that presence reveals himself to me, him, shim, whatever. I do believe it's a power. I don't believe it's an item. I believe it's fluid. And so I'm not going to contain it. But that energy is present, and it's definitely present in you. You definitely so articulate. I'm grateful, just so grateful for all my family. This is like my home Zoom meeting or something. You know, I just feel, you know, I just turned 47 years sober this on Sunday. And I got to tell you, when I say I'm a seasoned beginner, I'm a seasoned beginner. I'm just, I'm excited about something's happening here. There's so much happening out there that something must be happening in here. And I want to be awake. I want to have an awakened view of what this is, not one that's filled with fear. I love you, David. Give my love to that better half, okay? Thanks.
Mary, would you like to call on somebody?
Oh my God. This is so hard because yes, I want to call on everybody, you know, and I want to hear, is anybody's hand up at all, Chris? Can you see? Okay. Gee, let's see. Well, I don't know. Kurt, we got something coming up. Why don't you speak next, Kurt? We got something we're going to share in a week or so together. I love hearing Kurt.
Oh, we do? Oh, hey, I'm Kurt. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks, Mary. David, good to see you, and thank you. Yeah, I was just sitting back going, you know, I think everybody should have the luxury of a meeting like this. I think it just, for me, what it does is, you know, it's that it activates that energy, that interconnectedness. It just does. Listening to you, and I really appreciated, you know, what you said about third column, and how, I mean, that's the self. You know, that's that. And when it's activated, well, there's only one result, like you said, and it's fourth column. And, you know, I was thinking, there's a friend of mine that says it like this. He says, self-knowledge availed us nothing, but knowledge of self reveals everything. And that's what I heard from you tonight. I was listening to you and I was going, my God, he is so articulate. And I mean, I think that's what Bill envisioned when he said in the beginning of this thing, and I think he did, there's going to be another phase in sobriety. And that's what's happening. And I think Zoom's part of that platform. That's just my opinion. But, you know, the other thing I say, Liz said it, you know, I thank God I'm not suffering from what's not happening anymore. I was such a victim of, like Mary said, my mind and the stories that were produced because there was no conscious awareness to recognize that. I was identified as that. And when the availability to see that that wasn't me became accessible, the possibility to be free from it was there. It was not possible until I saw that. There was no separation between those two. And I just love this meeting too. I feel like this is like the new home group meeting, you know. You know, that's all I've got to say. You know, I'd like to pick somebody, I think they're still here, and I'd like to hear from JP in Vietnam. I think let me see if he's still here.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I am still here. It's,
Cool.
thank you, David, so much for sharing. I really enjoyed it, and it touched me in a special way because I was recently in a workshop over, I think it was like from March until June, and you know, this thing that Bill was talking about in this letter, and it's the first time that I heard it shared. You know, this thing about what is under Mr. Hyde, or is it, yeah, Mr. Hyde? Yeah, the unconscious. What are these unconscious motivations that drive me, right, to to create somehow this third column in my life that controls and drives my life, you know. Somehow, you know, in all the time that I've been writing inventory, I just assumed that, well, this third column is just me, right? I somehow just made this into me. But what I didn't realize, and I guess I just was not ready to see it, but what I realize now is that at some point growing up, I made these decisions based on self to create these third columns to protect myself from situations that I was not able to face and bear at the time, simply because I had no higher power to turn to or to rely on. And so, you know, I mean, over the last couple of months, it's been very interesting because I've been writing a lot of more inventory, and there's been a lot of exploration of these third columns on a different level, you know. And I used to be very allergic to terms like trauma. You know, I used to think that I'm above that kind of stuff because I have this program, I have God. I don't need to look at trauma. I don't need to look at how I grew up and the belief systems that I picked up growing up. That I live differently than that now because I see that these belief systems, and with all the emotions that are attached to these belief systems, they were still unconsciously controlling my life today, you know. And so, yeah, thank you for your share. It's very, very appropriate for me today. And I love this meeting. It's my first time here. I love it. And I love all of you here. Thank you.
Kurt, we might need you to call on someone else.
Who've got? How about Bruce? My old buddy Bruce.
Hi, I'm Bruce. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Bruce.
And I've been coming to the meeting for a little while. I've never spoken up. So thanks, Kurt, for giving me the opportunity. And David, that was just a wonderful, wonderful talk. And, you know, I could tell right from the start that you had this incredible enthusiasm and discipline in your program. And as soon as you mentioned Denver and you had a sponsor, Gay and I said, I bet it's Mickey. We had the good fortune of going to a retreat years ago that Mickey led. You know, for me, it's a little ironic to hear Bill's letter and the way he characterizes what happened to him as if it was some giant discovery, this secret discovery that no one else had experienced. And, you know, for me, before I had even heard about that letter, I had an experience like so many of us have in sobriety, where we get sober and the drink obsession's removed, and then we just kind of rest on our laurels for a while. And what happens is that egoic self just starts to eat away at us. But we don't really know what it is. And for me, it was just getting more and more and more uncomfortable, and pointing to everything outside myself as the source of the discomfort, but not really understanding what it was. And then I had an awakening just as powerful as that first one when I realized I was alcoholic. And I had that experience of becoming that observer where I was shown a position outside this egoic self where I really got to observe this false self from this external position, and really for the first time in my life, honestly see what that part of me did to my life. And you know, that's only by the grace of God that we get to have that experience, that second surrender. And I remember after that, I went through the steps again. And again, what I find a little ironic about Bill's letter is that I feel it was like Mary was saying, the steps are still the solution. It's just, and the steps always grow as we grow. It'll always show us what we need to see as we evolve. And I remember reading that whole third step discussion about self. And I had read that so many times in the past, and I never identified with it till I really got woken up. And all of a sudden I saw that is the source of my trouble. Selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my troubles. And the first time I went through the steps, I never finished my amends. And no one ever took me through 10, 11, and 12. I really didn't see any point in it for years in sobriety until I did. And but I think there's such and no matter what the mechanics are, no matter what the specifics of your practice are, there's such incredible power in getting still, spending time every day and getting still and looking within yourself. And, you know, for me, it's a combination of a mantra-based meditation and answering those nightly review questions. And just trying to stay self-aware. And it is a beautiful way of life. And it affords me a lot of moments of freedom. And of course, there's a lot of moments of just being totally trapped in self in between. But the beautiful thing is we have a way out. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful way out. So anyway, I really appreciated your talk. You created this atmosphere tonight that really influenced all the sharing. It's all been about solution and insight. And it's really been a great meeting. So thank you so much, Dave. Can I call on somebody?
Yeah, we've sort of morphed it into a tag meeting, so go for it.
All right. I'd like to call on my buddy Wyatt over there.
Thanks, Bruce. I'm Wyatt. I'm an alcoholic. Wow, what a meeting. It's been very powerful for me, and I want to thank you, David, for kicking it off with such a powerful message. You know, you're mentioning that, you know, our self-examination informs our meditation, and how that works hand in hand. It is so powerful, and it makes so much sense. And it's like you kind of know this intuitively, but I never really kind of like articulated or heard it be articulated that that's what's going on here. You know, the combination of self-examination, prayer, and meditation. And there's like a line somewhere in the back where it says, you know, if we can face our problems in the light of our experience, anyone can recover, you know. And so it's kind of like, you know, at the nightly review, just sort of like, I like the letter to God thing. That was also, that's kind of what I do too. And just kind of putting my guts on the table out there. And what's been coming to me lately is about how, oh, by the way, it's just great to see so many friends and faces that we don't get to go to meetings together usually. And then we get to meet here. So this has really become so special for me. And, you know, I was looking up at the wall and I saw we got these two masks that are the symbol for the theater, which is a smiley one and a frowny one. And these are the symbol for theater, for drama, you know. And it occurred to me how, you know, in the book says, hereafter in this drama of life, God's going to be our director, you know. And what can happen is, you know, I will be wearing either the smiley mask or the frowny mask, be going through my day, and there's a line from a song. It goes, wearing masks that turn to skin, hiding what you could have been. And sometimes these masks become my identity. And I think what happens, you know, in the nightly review, I get to separate a little bit from what my masks were throughout the day. And And the book talks about a belief in and access to a power greater than myself, which would really access to a consciousness that transcends these masks, that transcends the third column. So my life is all built about my self-esteem, my pride, my ambition, my security, my personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook. It's so big. Oh my God, it's so important. Wow, this is just overwhelming. And then when I do the nightly review and meditate, it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's like self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook are virtually, they're not that big of a deal in the light of God's love. See, we've got this tap into this inner resource, unsuspected, this infinite power of God's infinite power and love, God's love for us, right? It's flowing forth. Like Bill talks about this outgoing love for, I think, for God and creation or something like this. This is the healing circuit, the giving love, the outpouring of this love. Where does it come from? And like, I think Don P, shared this prayer with us about God, please let your love flow through me and into the lives of others. And that seems to be like the ticket, to sort of, so I can stay, somewhat stabilized through the crazy, well, like this, what does it say, stormy seas make a good sailor, right? Well, it's kind of stormy right now, you know what I mean? And so I need to keep my compass working and keep my North Star in sight here and know which way I'm going, right? You know what I mean? And so this is it's taking extra effort for me to recalibrate on a daily basis and get in alignment with this unsuspected inner resource. And sometimes I have to search harder for it, you know what I mean? And sometimes I get into bedevilments, and it's like, this is my ego has relapsed, and it wants to attach itself to these problems. And that means like the ego just drinks, like that's just like drink for the ego, just like try and solve some problems, right? You know what I mean? And then I get all caught up into it. And then I ask God to direct my thinking, right? And I realize that these bedevilments are just thoughts. And, the world seems to be trying to tell me, if you're not angry and scared, you're not paying attention. This is not God-directed thinking. God does not want me to be scared and angry. Emotional sobriety is not a resentment. A resentment is the opposite. A resentment is insane. Resentment kills more alcoholics than anything, right? So I need to be willing to go to any lengths to be free of that. And so luckily we've got a way out, like Bruce was talking about. And the freedom that we can experience, internally is something that I've had to turn to in silence, and then in sharing with others, and in our basic practical program that we've got, so anyway, it's been just such a joy to be, part of this. And I know, should I call on somebody?
Go for it.
I'd like to hear from Joel Minisquero.
My name is Joel. I'm a real alcoholic, and I recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. I was hoping you wouldn't call on me. I took a nap and I overslept, and my head's feeling kind of dopey. But what I heard from David was like, it kind of reminded me of reading or hearing Eckhart Tolle, where I can say, yeah, I knew that all the time. It was like a truth coming out, and he was connecting the dots. And I said, yeah, I knew that stuff. You did a great job, David. Thank you so much. I really love this meeting. I love all the faces I'm seeing right now. I kind of like that now we have Zoom and I get to see you guys a lot more often. It was really painful to wait a whole year to go to Colorado, and see everybody and join in with the family. And you are my family. That's the way I feel. And I have huge bit of codependency in me because I want to share this with all my, you know, sponsees and my close friends in AAs. I said, come, you know, but they don't. But I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I'm accepted by you guys. This is a really powerful letter that Bill wrote. I've been reflecting on it for many a year. And sometimes that can complicate it, but I like what David did, and that seems to be the simplest part about it, was that we continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. You know, we do the nightly review, we make amends quickly. We start using this, we start living this program. I find myself a lot less emotionally upset and a lot more stable. You know, this is a design for living. The emotional stuff, I mean, the one thing that really bugs me, and I'm sorry I didn't hear the whole, I caught you a little late because I said I overslept, but the part about trauma and how that, that brings me into an immediate place of survival that happened when I was a young child and stuff like that. My reaction is anger. I had a very abusive childhood. I was abused physically, mentally, spiritually, every which way. And at some point, I just rebelled, you know, and it's like a flag, a red flag in front of a bull's face. That's how quickly I could just charge and get angry. And I've done a lot of work on that. And it's generally, most times it's my pride that's been attacked, my ego. And I too did lots and lots of therapy. But I think the best therapy is right here. Is right here. I mean, it's good to understand, you know, what those triggers are and all that kind of good stuff. But I can analyze it to death, and if I don't have a solution, it don't mean crap. And for me, the solution is in 6 and 7. I think the whole steps, all the steps, eventually you come back to 6 and 7. I have to go to God with it. And thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, Bill. Looks like we got Aaron H. with his hand up. Hope that was intentional that he put his hand up.
I almost lowered it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't realize what time it was. But anyway, yeah. Hey, everybody. Aaron, alcoholic. I don't think I've ever raised my hand in this meeting before. I really enjoy listening to other people share. But I don't know. There was just so much good stuff. The lead was amazing, and everybody that has spoken has really talked to me. I feel like, but the step 11 stuff, it's so funny, man. And I'm sure I'm not much different than most people, but, I'm really good at starting stuff, and not a great finisher, whether it's, it's work, relationship or whatever. But, I come into AA desperate not to drink, and I'm real driven to, do this step work and complete it. And, all the stuff around 5 and what a beast it is. And then we know about, 9 and, what that can entail. And then I kind of coast, I don't put a whole lot of stock into 10, 11, and 12, kind of like, I'm good now. I mean, I know I'm not, but I'm just saying how my mind works. And about a year ago, I don't know, I was a few years sober, and I was out with my sponsor and Tom, and he gave me one of those notebooks. I think it was referenced in this meeting, where it lays out like the step 11 inventory. And I was like, how cool is this? Because something like that consolidated, I was able to do it. And for the first time really ever, I started doing, the inventory at night. And a funny story, I was sponsoring this guy not too long ago. I had some pages left in that notebook, and we were talking about step 11. And I was like, hang tight, bro. I was like, I got something for you. And I gave him that notebook, and he's like, holy crap. He's like, this is awesome. And I was like, yeah, welcome to real sponsorship, bro. And no, but anyway, I gave Tom credit, you know what I'm saying? But it was, I don't know. But one thing I do want to say, I love what was talked about the third column. This guy, I don't even remember this guy's name. He used to come to this meeting all the time years ago, and he always called it nerve work. And he goes, man, he goes, the funny thing, and I'm just repeating him, but he goes, man, the funny thing about the resentment section in the 4-step, he goes, I think I'm pissed about column 2. He goes, but I'm really pissed about column 3, you know? And what he used to say is that, like, column 1, like, he hated the dentist, and column 2, the cause was the dentist drill. He said, but column 3, why do I, you know, why does the drill piss me off? Because it hits the nerve. And he always, anytime people were disturbed, he would always ask, like, what nerve's getting hit? He goes, because when that happens, we react in, you know, column 4. And he would always go back to the 11th step, you know, seeking through prayer and meditation to, you know, find like God's answers rather than, you know, reacting from self. But this guy was kind of, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but he was kind of a loony type of out there. I mean, I don't know. He had an off the wall personality, and people kind of looked at him a certain way, but he got up one time at a podium at a meeting, and he was breaking down the, how he meditates on the St. Francis prayer and you know, in the 12 and 12. And he says, he goes by sentence, you know, like, where's there is hatred, may I bring love. He goes, and I'll pause for a minute and think, where do I actively have hatred towards somebody right now that I can go out of my way to show love? And he went through sentence by sentence, and it was just a profound moment for me. I really started thinking, I don't know, I really started seeing the benefits of step 11, and he started getting into it more in the literature. And I'll wrap up with this. I always love the paragraph. I don't have it in front of me, and I you know, my mind gets a little scattered when I'm talking in front of people, but the paragraph where it talks about, you know, like, there's times when the hand of God seemed heavy or even unjust, and, you know, we found new lessons for living were learned, you know that paragraph. And there was this older woman, she was in a meeting, she picked up 41 years not too long ago, and she said she was taking her friend to the hospital one day. She had some cancer treatment or something, and she's in the waiting room looking through this magazine, and there was this article by some like Nobel Peace Prize recipient or something like that. And he said he lived in this apartment, and he had these parakeets that he didn't cage. He let them fly around the apartment like free range, you know, and they loved it. And he goes, and one day I had to move, and it's New York City. I had to take the subway and all this. He goes, so I had to grab these parakeets up for the very first time in their life and throw them in a cage. He goes, and then I had to put a blanket over it so they wouldn't get sick, you know, with the winter air and all this stuff. And he goes, all these parakeets knew is that I created darkness in daylight. You know, I mean, I threw them in a cage, darkness. He goes, but what they didn't know was they were going to a bigger, more beautiful place where they were going to live out the rest of their days happier than they had ever been previously. And the woman was talking about how the God made the reference, like, you know, or the woman was talking about how the guy was making the reference that sometimes things like that happen to me, you know, that, I mean, it seems like, you know, darkness and, you know, the bad things happen, and I want to react. That hits those buttons in me, and I'm not a sit back and watch type of guy. Like, if you, you know, disturb me, like, my natural thing is to, let's, you know, remedy this situation in the easiest, quickest way. But when I can step back and realize, I don't know, that there's a bigger plan, and I don't know, try to seek, you know, base my reactions and what I think God would have me do rather than self, things 100% invariably turn out better. So I don't know. I just thought that was a cool story. I hadn't thought about that in a while, but somebody sparked my memory on it. But anyway, I hope you know how much I respect you guys on here, like all the, you know, the heavy, you know what I'm saying, all you people that share every week. I get so much from this. I look forward to this meeting too. I still go to meetings in person and on Zoom, but this is the highlight of my week. So thank you all for being here and blazing the trail, and just happy to be here with y'all. So
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, well, that is going to do it for us. It is 9 o'clock. Thank you to everyone who shared. This has been an incredible meeting. And just so you know, Sam, I think, has splurged for the big Zoom meeting. So if you want to let people know about this meeting, don't feel like you have to keep it a secret. I think we have capacity for a large number of people. So the way we usually close is we just stay muted, and we'll just close with everyone just saying the Lord's Prayer to ourselves silently. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
everybody.
Thanks, David.
Thanks,
Good
David.
to see you, Wyatt.
Okay,
Merry